Thank you, folks. They're taking their seats already, but two people who need no introduction. Ulrika Citron, thank you so much for being here. Emil Schreiber, thank you so much for being here. The composer, Brian Keane, what a fabulous job, thank you. And director Jane Wells is welcome back. I want to make you a part of this conversation as much as possible, so I'll just ask a few questions and then we'll open it up to your questions. But I'm going to ask you all a question first. One of the things that's kind of on a more trivial level, what I really like about this film is, as anyone who's traveled to Germany or to other European cities that might have noticed these stumbling stones, I won't attempt to say the German pronunciation, which is much cooler. I'm always curious about the origins, and we kind of get the story of this here and understand what this is about. And I'm wondering how many people from the audience have also asked that question to themselves. Is there some? Okay. We'll make you a bigger part in a moment. I want to start by asking, first of all, how this film came about. Let's start from the beginning. We do have microphones, I believe, for our guests too. We don't all have to share, although it's nice to share.
I just want to say a few things before, if you don't mind, because this is my home, the Upper West Side. I don't live on the Upper West Side anymore, but I still consider it my home. The JCC, my daughter Clara went to nursery school here. And I know so many people in this who are here tonight, so it's it's not so easy to do this, but thanks. So thank you to the JCC, thank you to everyone who came, my friends and family, and I just want to clarify one thing, and that is that I did not go through this alone. I just want to give a special thanks to my husband, Joel, who's been by my side every step of the way. I could not have done this without him. I could not have done the whole journey about my Jewish identity and learning about my grandparents and my fathers. And I just wanted to say that. So how did this film come about? Jane, do you want to take that on first?
I can.
Just got to flick the switch up.
Now it's working. I was very fortunate to have met Ulrika, and she joined the board of 3 Generations, and she had told me this story, I think, for a while about Gunter Demnig, and then we sort of suddenly, I thought, what an incredible story. And I didn't know, I had seen them in Rome actually, but I didn't know anything about the Stones. I didn't know about Gunter, and Ulrika introduced me to him, the whole story, and then to her personal story, and it took off from there. And I'm incredibly grateful to all the people I met, including Emil and most of the people you see in the film who I met through Ulrika, who was very generous in introducing me to this whole community in the Netherlands. And
thank you, Jane, that you wanted to make this film, and because my goal was never to be in it, to be honest. It wasn't. I had no interest in that. I wanted to help tell the story about the Dutch Jews. I'd met Emil a few years ago, before, I think 10 years ago, and he's been a big part in helping me and guide me in sort of my search, and we've become good friends, and he's helped me learn more about the story about the Dutch Jews, and I really wanted that out in the world because it wasn't a story that's so well known, and with this film, hopefully, people will better understand the tragic fate.
I think it's important to realize that the story that we have of what happened during the Holocaust in Europe is, especially through American eyes, is very Eastern European. The fact that people in the Netherlands would still walk on the street in late '42 just wearing their star, whereas everything was already going on in Eastern Europe. I mean, this is something that people are not aware of. So we have a very different and not too favorable history of the Jews in the Netherlands during the Second World War. So I think it's important also to bring that to the open.
I have many more follow-up questions to this, but I also want to make Brian a part of this and ask how you got involved.
I'm the one who should know how to work this thing. Okay. All right. I thought this was a pretty amazing opportunity, and what I think is really important about this film, the crux of it for me is what Emile said at one point in the film, where he's talking about the dehumanization of people, and that is what the process happens in these atrocities that are happening throughout human history, and particularly in this most horrible of cases. And what I really loved about the film was how much it humanized the story. And I think it was the Dalai Lama said, we grieve for that which has been our heart's delight. And I felt that the music needed to be loving, actually, and to embrace the interhuman relationships that we all can have some experience with and relate to, and that makes the message more powerful. And I think that's what's great about the project, about Stepping Stones, is that it's not some big number that you can't get your head around, right? As Emile says in the film, these are individual stories, and people who lost their grandparents and their parents, and who lost their connection to their past, and all for what? Because somebody convinced others to dehumanize victims. And I think that's the major lesson that the world still needs to learn. Thanks.
This film obviously was shot before October 7th, and Emile, I think you say there, you said something about how this rise of anti-Semitism, which I think we've all felt has come to the surface, and we all see the threats of it. At this point, when you were making this film, why was it so important to tell this story now at this time?
Well, first of all, I was going to make the disclaimer for the mayor, because it's no longer a case of some anti-Semitism. It's quite obvious, and it's becoming a real problem in the Netherlands. One of the things actually that triggered, that may have triggered even a bit more, is the opening of our National Holocaust Museum in Amsterdam. We opened it March 10th. I'm the director of that, and 4 years ago, we decided, obviously, that Yitzhak Herzog would be part of the opening procedures. And we extended an invitation, and the invitation was taken on and repeated by the King of the Netherlands. And basically all public officials stuck with the official invitation, but it led to enormous riots at their opening, which have hit the press here as well, and which is where they hit the world press actually, and we're reaching a point in which it's almost impossible to speak in the public realm. Certainly, as an institution as ours, which is half Jewish, half publicly funded, without at least having to comment on what is going on in Israel, and it's becoming very, very problematic. And the idea that I, as a public person, and I was in hundreds of interviews, I was on television more than my children even liked, and the idea that I decided not to use the most obvious argument why we had invited Herzog, which is the fact that every Jew in the world will have a connection with the state of Israel. Of course, so why would he? It's totally obvious that he would be there. But we were put into a position in which we had to defend ourselves for inviting the President of the State of Israel, whereas at the same time the king was there, the Dutch king, and a representative of the German president and the President of Austria. All of them were there, and the only president the people objected to was the President of the State of Israel. This is the situation in which we have landed, and that is making a story about the human aspect, and shooting a film on actually the humanitarian aspect also, and the human aspect of what was going on back then, all the more important. And that's why I like the word rehumanizing so much, because you give back people their individual identity by zooming in on their individual life.
Anyone else want to share on why this message is so important now?
I don't think mine's working. I think it is working. I think that for me, what's really important about this story is that it isn't political per se, and the humanization of the people and actually Demnig's whole thinking about remembering in this way, and that it is the work of an artist who is responding to the greatest catastrophe in human history, arguably, or definitively. And I think that this story, spans generations, and it shows how important it is to recognize what's happened in the past without making a political statement about a specific country or the exclusively Jewish part of the story, although that is implicit in it. It's not. I'm trying to be very careful what I say here, but I think I'm very pleased with the fact that it isn't political at a time where everything is political. And what I would like for this film is it to be seen and widely available in Jewish communities, but also in non-Jewish communities, because it is telling a story of human beings in a country we consider to be liberal, civilized, and part of civil society.
Did you want to add on?
I mean, I just, I have a lot of opinions on this, and I'm not going to voice them all, but I do think that the whole issue of the Holocaust has been now appropriated, and I think it's very important to make clear what genocide and Holocaust really means. And I feel very important about that, and I feel strongly about that. And I just had to say that because to me that's not political. So I think that this story that we're telling here is about what happens to individual families and individuals who are affected by something like this, and there are so many of these stories to be told, and there are stories that keep coming up, books that are keep being written, and again, I just want to say that the story of the Dutch Jews, 75% of the Dutch Jews were murdered. And they had given and had such a huge impact on society, and contributed to Dutch society since for centuries. And so I just thought it was very important to bring that story to light, and there's no, it's yeah, yes.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit more about Three Generations and how it can support.
Well, the idea of Three Generations is to tell the story. As I said, the foundation story of the organization was my father's work documenting the Holocaust. And I think that, and I would consider myself to be the second generation in this, and my children and children of all of us up here to be a third generation in continuing this awareness. And that is the mission of the organization, is to keep telling important stories, little-known stories that can illuminate some of the history of human rights abuses, genocide, and crimes against humanity. And we want to be able to continue to find little-known stories. And although what happened in the Netherlands is getting more widely known, most Americans and most people outside Europe really do only associate the Anne Frank story with the Holocaust in the Netherlands. And one of the first things I learned from Ulrike and then from Emil was to steer clear of that very well-known story and tell a more accurate one. And, you know, I really learned so much in making this film from incredible people. And, you know, it is my goal to continue to tell those stories, and ones that are less well known. So currently, I mean, the next project will be to look at the impact of seeing the Holocaust footage in real time on Alfred Hitchcock and others who saw those images then, and see how that has sort of crossed through the generations, and to understand what this kind of trauma does through generations in a way that will hopefully enlighten us to stop that.
So my final question is I'm sure what this audience wants to do is what can this audience do, and what are the plans with the film? How is the film going to get out there?
Well, the film, I think, has slightly, obviously having the film come out just after October 7th has been a special challenge, but it is, there's been a very good response in the Netherlands and hopefully shortly in Germany. And in this country, mostly through Jewish organizations and Jewish film festivals. And I think that's great, but I think it's a shame because I do feel this is a film that needs to be more widely shown. So that is the hope.
Spread the word.
Spread the word. And if you found the film moving, I would encourage you to tell your friends about it so they can come on May 21st, because if that is a big success here, then that bodes very well for the future of the film. So it's really, dare I say it, and be very un-British and say the future of the film is kind of on you now.
Good. Put the pressure on the audience.
Yeah,
And speaking of pressure on the audience, we'd love to make you a part of this conversation. So if you have any questions or comments in the form of a question, I'll grab us going over here.
Thank you. Several years ago, my wife Karen and I, and a number of other people, I'm looking to see if anybody's here, were privileged to go take a trip to Amsterdam, organized by Joel and Ulrike, and it just changed our vision. Anne Frank wasn't the whole story of the Dutch Jews. Nice people growing tulips and canals weren't the whole story of the Dutch Jews. I'm being a little bit facetious, but it was very enlightening and disturbing at the same time. So I have a sort of question to that director. There are two statements in there which jumped out of the page, out of the screen, I should say. Early on, they were talking about the Dutch Jews didn't really care. They didn't know. They averted their eyes from what was going on. Toward the end, there was a story of this young girl speaking to her mother, and the young girl would go to somebody's house, and there was a stone in front of it, and they claimed that they didn't know, they didn't see that, which is, you have this bright, shiny object in front of your house, you see it every day, several times, and you're not curious about it, which tells me nothing has changed. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to come to that conclusion.
Well, let me come to the defense of some of us. Not all of us, maybe. The first part is absolutely true. I mean, one of the most shocking things that I saw, I was in Amsterdam last night actually. There was our national commemoration, so I flew in this afternoon, and there was a big stage play. We have theater after the national commemoration, and there were some 450 theater plays being performed on that night. And the biggest one was a combination of all kinds of examples of things that went wrong after right after the Second World War for the Jews upon their return. And one of the most striking stories is the story of the, which is actually part of Ulrika's father's story, which is the story of foster children, who in many cases, by the Dutch authorities, the Dutch authority made the decision rather to keep them with their foster parents than to return them to their own parents for the better sake of the children. I mean, so this shows a level of recklessness and a level of insensitivity to the issue of someone returning. If there was this was never made into something official, but it was a consideration whether perhaps parents returning from the camps after, if they have not claimed back custody for the children within a month, they would not be returned to children. I mean, this was someone who had a very high position. It didn't become a law, and in many cases it did went right. But yeah, it was horrible right after the war, and we have a quote in the National Holocaust Museum of a young woman who said, "For me, the war wasn't over at the liberation. The war started with the liberation, because I continued to feel the same level of isolation that I had felt during the war, and that never left me." So that is the first part of your question. The shiny, I'll respond to that in a joke. It takes some serious polishing to keep them shiny in our weather. But apart from that, this is different per house, really. I mean, there are many people. I also showed the image around the corner of my own house, where the people are really taking care of it very well. And one of the rewarding experiences I have with the National Holocaust Museum, which we opened March 10th, we are sold out every day. So there is a lot of interest, and a lot of that interest is national and not international. And it's also a counter movement against all the anti-Semitism. And there's talks in the parliament, and there's talks in actually the city of Amsterdam will provide means that all Amsterdam children can come to the museum for free. There's talk in the national government to have all under 18 years old at least have one visit to the National Holocaust Museum or to another memorial center as part of combating anti-Semitism policy. So we are moving in the right direction. Upon my return in a week from now, we'll meeting with the highest level with the Prime Minister, with a couple of ministers to talk about countering anti-Semitism. But the fact that we have to have these conversations shows that it's there. And it's not over yet. Let's deal with it.
Thank you. Hi. I'm the daughter of two German Jews, and back in 2019, Mr. Demnisch laid two Stolpersteine for my grandparents. But what I wanted to say that was one of the things that was so striking and kind of in rebuttal to what you were saying is that it's, I think, a unique feature of the Stolperstein initiative is that it is a private initiative. Oftentimes there are done by organizations within communities, sometimes individuals, and there are many state and federal Holocaust museums is very important. But the fact that there are Europeans who are organizing the laying of Stolpersteine is important to recognize too. That doesn't negate anti-Semitism in the world, but I think that's an important feature of this initiative that's that's become so, widespread.
Let me. Sorry, you want to go first?
I just wanted to say that I think one of the most powerful parts of the project is that once you've seen them and you have noticed them and you do see them, whether it's through your family or outside your home, then you do notice them everywhere else afterwards. And in my limited experience filming there, every time we were somewhere where they were laid, all the neighbors came out. They were always supportive and very engaged with it. So I think it is actually a project that is growing and being impactful street by street, community by community, stone by stone. And that, to me, is a very moving part of it and something that really has changed in my... I mean, anybody who I know who goes to Europe sends me pictures as soon as they see them. And that's incredibly gratifying, and it just magnifies, snowballs.
Yeah, let me give you also an economic approach to this. I'm the chair of the Stolpersteiner Foundation in Haarlem, as you might understand after the film, and the mayor of Haarlem was actually the one who provided very serious means towards laying the Stolperstein in Haarlem. Typically, a Stolperstein, this is very easy to share with you. The Stolperstein costs approximately 150 euros. So laying 733 Stolpersteinen involves money. And he provided 50,000 euros towards that. That's by far the highest amount that is given in the city. We have laid more than almost 250 stones, and we haven't used one single cent because all the stones that we've been laying so far have been paid by the local inhabitants or by the families. So
there's a question up there in the middle. You could probably reach.
Thank you. This is a bit of an offshoot, but you talked about 75% of the Jewish community having been killed there. We hear about the large number of people being evacuated by sea, and also those who could not were refused entry to boats by fishermen. Is that true, and what were the percentages there?
I think you're talking about Denmark, maybe? I think you're talking about the Danish Jews. The Danish Jews were saved by fishermen going by the Danish people. It's an incredible story, and I just want to have one sentence on that, and that is that there's an incredible exhibit down at the Museum of Jewish Heritage about this very topic. It's the Danish population saved their Jews. They were taken to Sweden, that was neutral, over the Sound to southern Sweden. And then after the war, they came back, and so they were saved. And that was a unique story of the Danish. And many people do confuse the two countries.
If nothing else, this film will end that confusion between the Dutch and the Danish. And
well, I hope so, but I'm not convinced.
Can you pass the microphone to the woman behind you, please? Right behind you.
First of all, I want to thank you for film well done and very important on many, many levels. I found, for myself, one of the most intriguing parts was what Eureka. Sorry if I said your name wrong. The deepness of when you seemed kind of reluctant to talk about the deepness of your feelings towards your dad and everything, but that seemed to me like the most touching, which goes to show like the stones, one reason why they're so touching. So one of my questions is, did you evolve at all? Like, did you find out things as the film was being made, or did you already know what you wanted to say before? Like, was it scripted, or was
No, it was not scripted. That's a good question. I actually, when I first went there in 2014. I had not met my aunts, my uncle. I have an uncle there. I have cousins. I had never met them before, and so I met them, and I've developed a relationship with them over the years. And so I've learned things from them. My father he left after the war when he was born in 1940. So when he was of age, when he was 18, he was allowed to leave his foster parents, and at age 20 or 21, he went to Sweden, and he wanted to leave everything behind and just start anew. And so he really didn't want anything to do with his siblings. They had grown up in different families, so he didn't really know them that well. But they had, the Red Cross and the Jewish organizations after the war made sure that to reunite families, and at least so that they would have some connection to each other, even if they didn't live together. Anyway, I learned a lot from my cousins and my uncle and my aunt during this time, and some of this I learned during the filming. Even I found some things out. I mean, I even have found out things in the last year that I had no idea about. So certain details about my grandparents, especially, and the relationship with my father to his siblings. And it's not easy. It's certainly not easy, but it's something I've come to terms with. And I mean, part of it is therapeutic for me to sort of do a film like this, but more importantly, to tell the story. And I don't want it to be about my father, because my father really doesn't want. He's still in hiding, if you will, and so I don't want to out him necessarily and talk too much about him and his experiences. I think I've said enough, because he's still alive. So, but I'm really the only one in the family. There's cousins and there's an aunt and an uncle. They none of them really. They don't really want to. They think I'm a little strange that I want to know all these things. I'm putting the stones down. I mean, they think it's nice, but it's a little bit strange, I think. So.
I think our audience definitely embraces it. I'm afraid, I know there are many more questions, but I'm afraid we'll take that microphone back. I'm afraid we're out of time. Where can people learn more? What's the website? Where should we refer them?
Our website is number3generations.org, and there are various Stolperstein websites as well, and there's Emil's museum, the Jewish Cultural Quarter, and Ulrika's Facebook is a font of information too.
It's not public, so.
It's not public, yeah, that's true. But yes, I would encourage everybody to follow us to go to our website and learn a bit more, and to follow us on social media. Derek.
Folks, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Join us for more, and we show these films beyond Yom HaShoah, so please join us for more events. Thank you very much, and have a good night. Get home safe.